Tell you what, man. I just wake up every morning, let myself up a cig, and just look out the window. Look at all the sheeple, just going to work. Not a care in the world. Meanwhile, I'm some sort of deep, Sin City-looking motherfucker. But in reality, I'm just some unemployed jagoff living in a shitty apartment, subsisting on welfare and ramen noodles. Yeah, but let me spin you a yarn. Let me tell you about the way the world really is, because I'm a deep... I know shit about the world. I know shit. Let's talk about My Hero Academia, chapter 115, titled Unleashed. It's a fake cigarette. I say this because I know for a fact that there's going to be a shit ton of comments, because it happens every time I use this. It's just like, my god, Tekking, did you start smoking? You know that's bad for you. Okay, number one, everyone knows smoking's bad for you. Even the people that smoke know that smoking is bad for you, okay? It's fake. It's a puff cigarette. I cosplay as Matt from Death Note. I kind of have to meet the part. Okay, so this chapter of My Hero Academia really gives us a full scope on what that post-All Might world was. You know how a few chapters ago they kind of alluded to it when they were doing the safety meeting? We had that flashback during the provisional license exam of when Mara and everybody were planning what the exam was going to be like. They were planning it in accordance with group heroes, because that's what's going to have to kind of fill the gap. And I made the comparison, you know how it's like after 9/11 happened in America, everyone was talking about that's just, all this extra security in the airports, that's just how it is in this post 9/11 world. Well, this is how it is in the post All Might world, because All Might retiring, that changed everything, right? So it's told through the perspective of this guy named Gene, and we have actually met this guy before, but you might not really know about him. You might not remember him too much, because this is the first time we've seen him without his mask on, but we'll get to that. So he's just in this shitty apartment, just looking out at the world. Meanwhile, we get a TV going on in the background, broadcasting a news report. So Endeavor has become, for one thing, the new #1 hero. But a lot of people are iffy about that, because Endeavor, he's a pretty badass dude, big hulking physique, he has awesome fire powers, but he ain't no All Might. He is not an All Might. So a lot of people are curious. All Might had this kind of charming charisma and likable personality. You look at All Might and you one look at him, even when you look at the back of him as he's protecting you from the villains, you knew this guy was somebody you could trust. Meanwhile, Endeavor, his track record might be pretty good, but he also has kind of a shaky track record with the way he acts, his personality. He's very hateful. Coarse is the word that a lot of people are using. They even have a scene where we look at the Google results or the Moogle results. I guess the Final Fantasy Moogles have taken over and whatever. Anyway, yeah, so it's All Might Endeavor is not really, he's not trusted as the #1 hero. He feels even we don't get to see him in this chapter, but it's very obvious he doesn't feel like he deserves that spot. He got the spot because somebody had to take it. It wouldn't be very smart to have the #1 slot open. You had to fill that as quickly as possible. I'm going to assume that a lot of the heroes got bumped up. So if Endeavor got bumped up to 1, maybe Best Genist is out. We still don't know the #3 hero, who probably got bumped up to #2. What was the #5 hero? Blade Edge or something like that. He's probably bumped up to #4, the ninja dude. So that's the first thing that they were talking about on the news. What we get next is exactly how the villains have been acting ever since All Might got taken out, because All Might was alright, he struck the fear in the heart of people. If anyone was trying to think about becoming a villain, if they were sitting there trying to maybe I could use my quirk to be a villain, All Might served as kind of a deterrent factor. He's no, I don't want to get my ass beat in by All Might. But now that he's gone, a bunch of these ragtag people are submitting to their inner desires, as Gene puts it. And by the way, Gene, the entire time as he's thinking all this, we're kind of hearing this as an inner monologue for the most part. He has these contradictory thoughts, man, I really like that guy on the news. No, I fucking hate him. Man, these guys are really doing stuff that's deplorable. No, it's awesome. So we're going to get more into that later if you haven't already figured out who the guy is. One of these said villain groups that are popping up are the Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, kick-ass names. That means, let's just pause for a second. That means Tarantino exists in this universe. I would assume so. So Quentin Tarantino is now in the My Hero Academia universe. I wonder what quirk he would have. I wonder what he would... He has, like, a foot fetish thing, and he also has a thing for, like, replacing body parts with guns. So I'm going to say he has a quirk that can turn his foot into a gun, which I think he's already done that in the Machete movie. I think. Well, anyway, so the Reservoir Dogs are just like this team of people that were just like they're like first time villains, but they're kind of doing this effectively if they work in a group and they like rob a convenience store. They take like an entire not just the cash register. They just take the entire front counter and then run into a truck and then speed away. They're almost stopped by another guy who I don't know if he was stated to be an official hero. I think it works both ways. The people that wanted to be villains but were afraid of All Might, then now are villains. But I think there's some more like illegals, illegal heroes, the vigilante group, because there's a hero that comes up and stops him, and I don't know, man, he looks pretty rough. He looks like he has like a bandana and has a freaking gun on his arm. He doesn't look like an official hero. He looks like the guy like a Knuckle Duster, in the illegal series that just, I decided I'm a hero now and just went out to try to stop him. He gets his ass clubbed in with a metal pipe. I guess I should say he gets his head caved in with a metal pipe. Quick side note for Bleach fans, the villain name of the guy that clubs him over with the metal pipe is named Hario. So there you go, the steel skin from the Iran cars. There's your Bleach reference, kids. So with the guy Gene, he goes over this and he's just kind of giving us a monologue. He puts on a jacket. He's going to like watch some of the other villains. We don't exactly know what his job is yet. He's like, I'm gonna go do my job, but he's just kind of watching villains rob stuff, and he's just kind of in the background. He gets a phone call from a guy named Giron. Now Giron we've seen before. Giron is the broker that handles like the underworld, where all the villain associates and how they get their gear, how they get their outfits and their disguises and shit. As well as their weapons. He's the guy that takes care of all that. He's going on saying, man, business has been booming ever since, All Might got taken down and everything. Tomura's thinking about gathering everybody together again. So we're getting updates on the Villain Association, the Villain Alliance, or whatever you want to call it. They're not grouping together much. They're not getting together for another big attack, because last time, they did well last time. Last time they attacked the kids at the mountain retreat, but then the whole thing with Camino. I mean, All Might was defeated, and but All for One was also captured, so they dispersed. They didn't say dispersed though just because to hide. They were also looking out for people to gather their numbers together. So you see Dabi, the freaky zombie looking dude with all the Stitch shit. He's looking for potential villains to join the association, but they're very selective. He runs into a bunch of people in the alleyway, and Dabi's like, you guys suck, you guys aren't even worthy, so he just torches them with his fire quirk. So we go back to Gene, and we finally find out who this dude is. Gene is the villain twice. We saw him. He's kind of like Diet Deadpool. He had a very interesting personality back during the school trip arc. He's the guy that can make clones. His quirk, he refers to it as doubling. So he can make quirks he can double anything, but it can happen it can happen, it can stack, essentially. So he can make a double of himself, and that double can create a double of himself, and that double can create a double of himself. So he's not limited to just creating something twice. He can keep on doubling it over and over again. Very simple quirk, very fucking overpowered if you think about it, Like, ineffectiveness, couldn't he just, like, if he gets his hand on a fucking nuclear weapon, you're fucked, right? In a sense, because when he copied Dabe back in the Skull Trip arc, he kept his quirk and everything. You can liken it similar to Naruto's Shadow Clones, but they even can take a decent amount of damage before dying. It's not like you could just like thwack them on the head and they just poof. They take a decent amount of damage before they go away. But the drawback is he can't control them. So if doubling inanimate objects is fine, I guess, but if he starts to double... Actually, I'm trying to think about it. Has he doubled anything other than inanimate objects? Because if he could do that he would just, like, not be living in a shithole apartment. He might just only be able to double people. Which is odd, because for most techniques, it's always, like, they're always iffy with the organic shit. You ever notice that? Like, with Yaoyoroza's quirk. It's just like, oh yeah, she can create any non-living thing. You start thinking about, Yaoyoroza can create living things, and we got, a god complex on our hands here. But his might be the opposite. He might be able to, like, I can only, double, human beings, not like inanimate objects and shit like that. Well, anyway, a side effect of his quirk also is that he has this contradictionally, like, dual personality thing going on. And it seems like to cause him problems because he can't handle it. He goes on telling us a backstory of him. Not that you ever really wanted to know the story. I don't know. In this chapter, it seems like his personality is completely different when he's a civilian and when he actually puts on the villain costume. Because he was kind of hilarious in the school trip arc. He was doing all these cool movements and he seemed like an interesting character, right? And here he just seems like, he's like, oh god, fucking people, man, their system, part of the system, dude, it's just fucking awful. Well, he goes on to this story about his past, how he was a kid with his quirk, he just doubled himself and made a shit ton of clones of himself, and they were all, like, basically doing his chores for him, and he lived like a king. The problem and the drawback is he doesn't have control over the people he doubles. They have their own autonomy. So after a while, it didn't take very long for a fight to break out between all of his clones, and one of them stabbed him in the fucking forehead. Now, eventually the fight broke out, it lasted like a week, and they all died. All the clones died, so only Gene was left. Here's the kicker, though. We don't know if he was the original, so the original him might have possibly died. I don't know how that works, but it's entirely possible. Sure, why not? It's more fun to think that he's a clone that just killed the original, and like I said, like, it doubles, so as long as he doesn't get injured severely, he doesn't poof or turn into, like, the muck or whatever. But yeah, the Villain Association, they're trying to gather people together to work for it. There's this moment where the Reservoir Dogs get, destroyed by another villain group that's popping up. These guys all have, like, these old school Plague masks on. One of them is called Overhaul. This one guy looks like fucking Plague Knight from, Shovel Knight, the expansion. You should probably check out that game, by the way. But the chapter ends out. Actually, one moment with Gene before we get to the end. Gene is staring down at the Plague villains, the ones that took out the Reservoir Dogs, and he didn't think the Reservoir Dogs, they were just kind of petty criminals, but these guys seem to have an objective and a goal, and they seem to know what they're doing better. So Gene is like, oh man, I don't know what I should do, and he puts on the mask, and I guess when he puts on the mask, he becomes more of a one entity. He doesn't have the contradictory thoughts in his head. So it's like, maybe it's like, okay, when he's just himself, when he's just Gene, he has all these different contradictory thoughts, like he doesn't know who he is. But when he puts on the costume and he becomes the villain known as Twice, then he becomes just the one entity. I am Twice, and he gets, his personality completely switches over. So he's like, what shall I do? Should I? So I think he's going to go enlist these guys, because these guys seem to be, like, they're relevant to the story. They have an interesting personality and a cool aesthetic design with the masks. So we'll see where that goes from there. Last scene of the chapter, we cut over to the prison where All For One is being captive. Yes, All For One and All Might are having a meeting. Now, this takes place at the exact same moment that the provisional license exam was going on, which answers a big question. Why wasn't All Might watching the provisional license exam? I'm not even saying, like, why wasn't he in the crowd, because he's kind of a celebrity. I'm just saying, how come we didn't see him, like, watching it online? Like, I'm sure they live streamed this shit or something, right? Like, I wonder how many views that would have gone, or on the television, or keeping up to date. Like, why haven't we seen All Might all throughout the provisional license exam arc? Well, it was because while the provisional license exam was going on, he was meeting All For One in jail. And you see this scene with All Might. He might be in his, like, weakened form, but he's still wearing his hero outfit because he's boss like that. Probably should get it resized, though. And also, you see All For One there, he's all freaking chained up, going away. And you know what I finally realized? I didn't notice this in the initial fight. I mean, it was pretty obvious. I just didn't want to think about it because it was rather disgusting. But All For One's face, right? He was wearing that big mask, and then All Might smashed it off of him. And now you have, like, it looked like his entire face. It looked like he was covered in some other mask, beyond that. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And then in this chapter, I just came to the realization, like I should have came to already, that's just his fucking face. That is his face. He has no eyes. Okay, his entire face is just burned, like third degree fucking burns, Keep in mind, this guy is, like, pushing over 100, He has some quirk that can, extend his life, God knows how old he is. He's probably older, maybe like that. And all the damage he's taken in the fights with All Might. So that is his fucking face. He effectively doesn't really have working, ears or anything like that. It's all through quirks, like that. Eyes, he uses the infrared quirk. So that's just really disgusting. Like, all this skin peeling. How much aloe vera must this guy go through on a daily basis? Seriously. No wonder he wear the damn mask. So, All Might simply says, like, I'm here to settle this all for one. So what are they going to talk about? What are they going to discuss? I'm going to say he's going to discuss something with Nana, his mentor, the seventh inheritor of One for All. Because, we have All Might, who's the 8th recipient, and then, Izuku, who's the 9th. But there's a past here with Nana, as well as a past with all the members of One for All, because All for One's brother was the original owner of One for All. It was because of All for One that One for All existed. And I'm amazed that I'm not mixing these shit up, but I'm probably going to at some point. Just prepare yourself for that, by the way. If we're going to do this reviewing series, I'm going to mix up All for One and One for All a shit ton of times. So, you can complain about it. I'll try to do my best, but it's going to be hard when they're both being talked about in the same scenes, right? They're going to discuss her, probably the past with that, and maybe Tomura, like how that's going. But All for One is still pretty much a mystery, like he was like kind of a well-known figure back in the day, but that we don't know a lot of stuff about him. Izuku even, like when All Might was explaining it to him, like the past of All for One, he was explaining, you might have heard of this individual in the past, but Izuku's like, yeah, but I thought he was just a myth. He's like, oh, no, he was real. So there's some going on here that's like collectively that people know about as sort of like a myth or a legend. So I don't even know how the fuck old this guy is. He said he came into like right around the dawn of the phenomenon, and Izuku was stated to be the 4th recipient, the 4th generation quirk. So 4 generations, we're talking easily over 100 years, but it could be longer than that. We don't know. Well, anyway, what did you guys think of this chapter? It was really just a big exposition dump of a chapter, getting us into the mood of the area, setting us up what we're doing, letting us know what the villains were doing, other than Toga, who is obviously infiltrating the provisional license exam, but what is going on with the villain association there? They didn't attack the license exam. No, they're building their numbers up. They're trying to get an even bigger thing now, kind of to kick them while they're down. We see other members of the villain association, like the magnet dude and the lizard guy they're also trying to recruit. So something that started off as honestly a group with just Tomura and the Black Mist dude, Black Fog, and like a handful of useful villains has now become, you had about like a good dozen or so during the Skull Trip arc, and now it's going to balloon into even more of them. So something else is brewing on the horizon, something big. They're making it a point to say that how unstable the world is now, how unstable and shaky Endeavor's spot as the number 1 hero is. We still need to find out what happened with, like, what's the 3rd hero, who number 3, probably number 2 now, what's the deal with him? Something's going to happen. We don't know where this is going, but considering that Izuku and most of Class 1A is probably has their provisional license or is going to get it in the near future, it's going to involve them using their licenses for maybe something, and then that's going to get tied into a huge, massive battle. I don't know how that's going to go down, but it was an interesting chapter. Jean was more of an interesting character when he's a villain, when he's twice, rather than now, because he's just the typical, like, he's like, just, whatever, man, I don't care about the world. Fuck me. That kind of shit. So I was kind of dubious as how that started off, but what do you guys think about what's going to happen next, and what do you think All Might is going to discuss with All for One? Alright, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101, signing out. It's fake. I swear to God, it's fake. It's fake. Seriously, look at it. Look at it, guys. It's been staying the same the entire episode. It's fake. Smoking's bad.